Okay. All right, everyone. This is the Misery Loves Company reading series. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, the Misery Loves Company reading series is a weekly social reading series where we have we say outsider and transgressive artists come on and read their works. And we've got, as usual, a pretty good selection of readers for tonight. But yeah, I just one quick heads up to everyone. I am fighting off something like a flu or something, so I'm going to be a little more like downbeat and lethargic than usual. So I won't be bouncing off the walls like I usually am. Anyway, so all of that said, let's get this thing started. First up to read is Ryan Kelly. Are you with us, Ryan?
Hey, what's up? I'm here.
Hey, Ryan. So
Hi.
just just quickly, because I forgot to say this at the beginning, I'm gonna try to put links to the works being read in the chat and up on Twitter whenever possible. Anyway, Ryan, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thanks. This is an excerpt from Teeth. Chapter 4. Seriana. Sane Vibes. Smeared earthworms. Paled knuckles clutching spring orchids as she studies her shoe. Royal violet dress. These and other memories for sale to girlroids via their ProMethNet hub. The NeuroNet was tested for a reason. Interlacing a whole city of otaku could have ended in sick ultraviolence. Before there was the NeuroNet, there was ProMethNet, and it's what the girlroids were left with. Left with, though ProMethNet is strange and full of harm. So Seriana bypasses the market screen with a steady blinking pattern and flips out to geospatial tracking. It was an animus, Kay says. Just scan for those. It's all good. Not Seriana's to ask how Kai knows. Something in the way of reading Onigash's eyes like a paperback. How can a god be used like that? But Kai is sure. And when she's sure, she's right. So Seriana reads the digital context fast and pulls herself out of ProMethNet. Gives a soft cry as the data bleeds away, seeps into the physical world one cut at a time. Tattered the moment before it's gone. The skeins of fate, she thinks. Brazen. Tempting sane vibe failure. So easy to give in. To let it all go and spiral her mind map into the trillions of divine nodes beyond the starfields. Waiting for her. Aren't they? It's hardwired, Seriana says, in my head. Stay faithful, Kai says. Seriana nods. Then she wings. Chapter 5. Elise. Dead Seeds. She dreams. Her heart taps out a surrender code, and she's gone. Later she'll wonder about the heartbeat coda that takes her away. Does it fuck with her veins? The blood flow stops and starts in a pattern, after all. Veins were not designed for patterns. They know one rhythm. The body depends on each cell in the megacosm getting it right. She dreams, and in her dream she's before the Black Shrike. What else to dub it? Its feathers are slick with spores and tar black oil. The dankness affronts her in waves of shock and fury. How has she failed this hard? The Black Shrike sings a song, a heavy song, sick with the sludge and reverb of the kabuki maids, but without the atonement and melody. It abrades, seems to line her mind with blades that pick away at her thoughts, exhume them so nothing is left but the pits, the dead seeds, the aches lest their flesh-fat growths of wishing well fantasies. Elise aches as the Black Shrike sings. That's enough, she says. The Black Shrike doesn't listen. When has it ever? Except it's never been this dark. There's never been so much at stake. The ground she stands on is barren, blasted as if by neutrino bomb. Her feet are bare. The glass stone digs into her with each breath. Please stop, Elise says. I don't want you. The song surges into a harsh noise wall, thick with static and reverb. The black loop runs in cascades through the down. Plates tufts and sickly clumps of paste as the Black Shrike's chest heaves. Elise waits for that bliss, the moment when her dreaming brain tunes us to BG, but it never comes. She's there with it, under her skin, feeling the noise beckon something within her. A hellish puke. before it diffused through her vein walls, reaching her skin cells. Her skin sips her guts. Death wears her skin like war paint. Death wears her skin still as she blinks light into waking being. She awakes to the Kabuki Maid song, seeking what's left of her, knowing her remnants aren't enough. Not enough because the fantasy beats her heart now, built for the decades of her life. Through them the dark pattern will gnarl its myth into all she touches, the stained physical world to turn over and repeat. All blooms her years find will wither in abscess until she's left with a frail, broken body, frothing its own cuts and bleeds with spit. Onigasha drools his hentai spin dreams. Push him away. The Kabuki maids have gathered in the center of Animus. Apart from them, Elise is all alone. The sippers fled. Out there somewhere beyond the force field, maybe sleeping now, comfy, sheeted. But they've seen the devil's face, the look in the Girlroyd eyes, and felt her soft touch. All of them now plagued by mold, just as Osa wanted. He had it all figured out, she thinks. Knew I'd want shimmy juice the moment I left. Sippers, frail in the static shock of Enthal, now saints in Osa's crusade. Her shimmy juice glass is empty, light twisting through it tattered by smears. What sticks in shimmy is caught, marked its presence, the rest finding her throat. She hadn't known she drank. Her heart must have thrown the world away, keeping it on that trash level your brain averts its gaze from. That level where feti twist from embryos to escape the insects. Elise has seen race from that world before. Dead souls refuse heights and show off the wreckage of their choice to fall. It's a choice to fall, no matter how you die. I'm leaving, Elise tells the Girlroids. They remain crouched in a huddle, keep their looks from her as she approaches the force fields. It flickers off for her, and then she's gone. Thank you.
Thank you for reading. Well, I really dug the imagery in that piece, by the way. Like just the vividness and like otherworldliness of it. It was really like it was fantastic. Next up is Essie Thomas and Daryl Epp. I'm not sure how you two wanted to handle this. Daryl, are you reading for Essie or?
Yes, I am.
Okay, cool. So you can take it away.
This is from, what is my time limit? Is there anything
No, there's no fixed time limit. Generally at like 20 minutes, I think is a good kind of chunk of time. But if you run a little over, that's fine too. If you run a little under, totally fine.
does the 20 minutes include my time to read a few of my poems, or am I just?
No, sure. We've never quite done it this way before, where someone will read for someone else. If you want to read for Essie and then read for yourself, you can go over. You can split that up however you want. You can also maybe, if you want to give a little context about Essie's work, maybe, and why you're reading for him.
For you.
Or you can do it for yourself. Great.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how comfortable you were on camera.
I love to talk. I just don't read.
Oh, I can understand.
Honestly,
that.
I'm a writer, but I don't read.
That makes sense. I know that I like
younger
hear a lot
little
of,
bit, not so much. I don't got time for that.
Right. No, yeah. So why don't you give us a little context about your book, and then Daryl can read, and then Daryl can kind of segue to his own work. Does that
I'll
make
give you
sense?
a quick rundown of everything.
Sure.
I was a drug addict carny for 25 years. I decided after my girlfriend thought my books were interesting because she's got a master's degree in sociology from Mac University. She was doing her degree. She said, you know what? I think your stories are pretty interesting. Honestly, I didn't think they were too interesting myself because I lived it and it was just crazy. But she convinced me to do this. And so we came up with Crackleton, and she actually lived it with me. That's why we wrote that one first. I got 5 books. And that's actually the newest book. Like timeline wise, like in my life. It's the most recent story.
So you're kind of working your way backwards through your life a little bit in your
Well, I'm
writing?
kind of like Bukowski, you know, the way he pops back and around all over the place with his life,
Right.
you know, the way he is. Well, he's one of the inspirations, him and Hunter, of course, and somebody you might not have heard of, or you might have, Crad Kolodny. He was a street author in Toronto from the 70s to the 90s. Look him up. He's actually good. He's got some good books, man. One called Excrement, about selling books on the streets.
He's got me with the title alone.
It's fucking, he's crazy, man. He's awesome. He's awesome. You like it. But he really gave the inspiration of the street thing. So it just became what it is. But my girlfriend lived Crackleton with me, so I thought we would begin there because she lived it with me. So I got education behind me. I got education myself, but I got extra education behind me with my girlfriend, and she is my editor. And I could not 100% do this without her. We are 100% collaboration in this. So anyway, I'm gonna have Daryl read a chapter that he likes the best. I've told him to pick one he likes the best out of the book. So, and there's a sequel to that book. There's Crackleton, right? Of course. And then there's my sequel. Because people ask for it. This is actually the last book I wrote, the 5th book I wrote. This is the first. And this one's the last one I wrote out of 5. Because I didn't want to do them in back to back, because I didn't want to be known as the Crackleton guy.
That makes sense.
So I went, right after that, I went to another novel, Squeegee Kid. This one here about Toronto in the 90s, surviving the streets of Toronto. And then I went to my Carney series, which is going to be a 10-book series. Here's book 1 of my crazy 25-year Carney. If you think Crackleton's crazy when you hear it or read any of it, that's nothing compared to this stuff. I went into short stories just to show, like, it's not just, I could write anything. I don't care what it is. Screenplay, you give it to me, I'll write it. But anyway, so I'm going to have Daryl read the chapter he likes best from Crackleton, my first one. And I call it my crown jewel because really, Crackleton got me to where I am. And I love it. So.
Awesome.
I'll
Yeah,
introduce
Daryl.
here Daryl, the Hamilton Literary Award winner in poetry for 2019. Here he is.
Awesome. Daryl, why don't you take it away then? Thank you so much, Essie.
No problem, man.
Time permitting, I'd like to do an excerpt from chapter 7 and an excerpt from chapter 18. First off, chapter 7 really shows the anguish he's in and how his situation requires so much lying. So here we go. The negative thoughts in my head were so intense at that moment that, as insane as it sounds, I actually wanted to tell Christine the truth. I wanted to tell her about my drug use and about how I'd been driving around a crack dealer. Without even hesitating, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a baggie. It was a little drug baggie that I had a couple of Percocet in. I always kept a couple on me in case my ankle was bothering me. I'd done the last one that morning and still had the baggie in my pocket. I showed Christine the empty baggie. The Percocet had rubbed against the plastic, making it look like there had been some kind of white powder inside of it. The guy that I'd been driving left this in my car tonight, I said. I found it after I dropped him off. Christine took a closer look at the baggie. What is that? She said. I don't know, I said. It looks like he had some kind of powder in here. What kind of powder? I'm not sure. Cocaine, probably. Either that or heroin. Christine had a horrified look on her face. Jim, what are you trying to say? She said. Are you trying to tell me that you think this guy's a drug dealer? Yeah, I said. It would definitely explain why he wants me to drive him around all the time. I don't know where he goes or what he does when I drop him off, but I don't think that he's really running errands. I think that he's having me take him to his drug deals. My intention in telling Christine all of this was to make it easier for me to tell her the truth about my drug use. If Christine thought that I was being honest with her about the guy that I was driving, the moment that I became suspicious of him, I figured that she would be more sympathetic towards me when I told her why I'd agreed to drive the guy in the first place, to support the drug habit that I'd been hiding from her and which I'd been struggling to quit. When the moment came to tell Christine the truth, however, I just couldn't get the words out of my mouth. I was afraid that Christine would leave me and go back home to her parents, or that I would ruin her term at school. It didn't help that Christine was already freaking out about the guy being a possible drug dealer. "I don't think that you should drive this guy anymore, Jim," Christine said. "You should call him up right now and tell him that you can't drive him." I immediately regretted the decision to tell Christine anything. Seeing as how I'd already opened my mouth, though, I had no choice but to do damage control. "You know, now that I think about it, Christine, that baggie might have just had some pills in it or something," I said. "I doubt the guy's a drug dealer. He probably just carries some pills on him for his own personal use." Christine wasn't convinced. "You don't know that for a fact, Jim," she said. "What if he really is a drug dealer? I mean, think about it. What the hell kinds of errands could he possibly have to do right now, at this time of night? It's after 9 o'clock. All the stores are closed." It was a pretty good point. I thought of something quick. "He told me that he wanted me to drive him across town to his daughter's house," I said. "It sounds plausible. That might be where he's really going." "I still don't think that you should drive this guy," Christine said. "If he is a drug dealer, you're taking a big risk. What if you get pulled over by the cops and they find this guy in your car? He might be known to the cops in Hamilton. How are you going to explain what you're doing with him, Jim? You've got prior drug convictions." These prior convictions were from some marijuana charges that I'd gotten in Toronto in the late 90s and which I'd done jail time for. "Maybe those charges are old," I said. "No cop is going to care about some old pot charges. Anyway, I did time for them. I've got no outstanding warrants. If the cops were to run me in their system, nothing would happen. I don't even have any unpaid parking tickets." "What about the baggie you found?" "What about it? If the cops found that in your car, couldn't they arrest you?" "No, the baggie is empty. The cops wouldn't get too far with that. It only has trace amounts of drugs in it. That's probably why the guy left it in my car. I don't think he would have left a baggie in my car if it had actual drugs in it." "Well, what if they search the guy that you're driving? Then they search him. If he's got drugs on him, then they bust his ass and take him to jail. Nothing would happen to me in that situation. I wouldn't have any drugs on me. There wouldn't be any drugs in my car. I would just tell the cops that I don't know the guy that well, that I'm just giving him a ride somewhere. The cops can't arrest me for just giving some guy a ride. How am I supposed to know where he goes or what he does when I drop him off?" "I still think it's a bad idea." "Yeah, but it's a little bit of money right now, Christine. I'll just keep my eyes open when I'm around this guy, all right? I'll make sure that he doesn't leave anything in my car, like baggies, even if they're empty. That way, there's absolutely no risk." I knew that Christine was still nervous about the idea, but she had to trust me. Between the two of us, I was the only one who really knew about the criminal justice system and how it worked. I hadn't just read about it in some sociology book. I'd actually been involved with it in real life. I knew what the cops could do if they stopped you. I knew what they could charge you with and what they couldn't. Christine didn't have a clue about any of that shit. "I guess you're right," Christine said. "I'm probably just being paranoid." "You are," I said. "Trust me, it'll be fine." Christine went back to her studying. Half an hour later, I'd come down enough and was straight enough to leave the house. As I walked down the stairs to my car, I thought about how close I'd come to telling Christine the truth and was glad that I hadn't. You might be able to tell her at some point in the future, I told myself, once you've kicked this drug habit, and this is all ancient history, but you definitely cannot tell her now. And now a brief excerpt from later in the book, chapter 18. He's been driving around crack dealers to get crack directly. And here we are near Ivor Stadium, I believe, at a Tim Hortons. Yeah. He's driving around a crack dealer named Pablo. Chapter 18. I want to get a coffee, Pablo said all of a sudden. Let's stop at Tim Hortons. I pulled him to the first Tim Hortons that we came to. It was the same one that we'd met Sal at earlier. Want anything? Pablo said as he got out of the car. No, I'm good, I said. Pablo closed the door and walked off towards the store. I watched him in my rearview mirror for a second and then turned my attention back to the street. I was parked facing Barton. I watched the cars drive by as I sat there and waited. After a few minutes, I started to get impatient. I started sneaking glances at Pablo through the store window every 10 or 20 seconds to see if he was advancing in the line. Every time that I looked, though, there was still someone in front of him. Come on, man, I muttered. Hurry up. Suddenly, out of nowhere, two vehicles came barreling into the Tim Hortons parking lot and slammed on the brakes. One of them was a black Toyota Corolla. The other was a red Chrysler minivan. Oh shit, I thought. It's the cops. The doors of the minivan flew open, and two plainclothes cops jumped out and rushed towards the Tim Hortons. In my rearview mirror, I watched the cops burst into the store, make a beeline for Pablo, and tackle him to the ground. The people in the store were horrified. They were screaming and freaking out. A few seconds later, the cops in the Toyota got out and came over to my car. One of the cops was young. The other was older. They both looked like your typical Hamilton cops, though. They were both about 6'2" and built like CFL linebackers. The older cop came up to my window. License and registration, please, he said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. I took out my license and registration and handed them to the cop. The cop looked at my license for a second and then looked at me. Please step out of the vehicle, sir, he said. Why? I said. We have probable cause to search this car. I got out of my car. I'm going to need you to open the trunk now, the cop said. Okay, but there ain't nothing in there, I said. The cop didn't care. He had me open it anyway. My trunk didn't have a release button, so I actually had to go and open it manually. After inspecting the trunk, the older cop had the younger cop search the rest of my car. While the younger cop was searching the driver's seat, he found something. Hey, Les, he yelled suddenly. Check this out. In the younger cop's hand was the automatic goof beater, my mini baseball bat. He was hoisting it up in the air like a goddamn trophy. Les looked at the bat in the younger cop's hand. Good work, Frank, he said. Then he turned to me and smirked. What is it? Baseball season already? He said. Yup, I said. A few minutes later, the cops were finishing searching my car. It was obvious from the way that they were acting that they'd found absolutely nothing of interest in it. So, what's the score here? I said. Did you guys find anything? Am I free to go? Just hold on a second, Les said. Why? Am I under arrest? No. Then what do I need to stick around here for? We've got some questions that we want to ask you. I really didn't feel like answering any of the cops' questions. I knew that legally, I didn't have to tell them anything. I told the cops that I wasn't interested in talking to them, but they were persistent. It'll only take a few minutes, Frank, the younger cop, said. We just want to ask you a couple of things about Pablo. After that, you can go on your way. But there's nothing to talk about, I said. I hardly know the guy. I was just giving him a ride somewhere when you guys jacked me up. Les wasn't buying it. Don't give us that bullshit, he said. We know that you know that Pablo is a crack dealer. I'm guessing that you're, what, driving him around to support your crack habit or something? Look, man, I said, you can think whatever you want. I don't have to talk to you guys. I'm out of here. I turned and started to get into my car. Suddenly, Les spoke up. Okay, Jim, he said. You don't have to talk to us if you don't want to. That's fine. Maybe we'll just go over to your house later and talk to your wife or your girlfriend. I'm sure that she knows a thing or two about what you've been up to. I'm sure that she'll be more willing to cooperate with us. I was stunned. I couldn't believe how far the cops were willing to go just to get some fucking information out of me. They might have just been bluffing, of course, but I had no way of knowing this. They seemed like total dirtbags. I didn't put it past either one of them to actually go over to my house and do a thing like that. All I knew was that if the cops showed up at my house and talked to Christine, Christine would find out that I'd been driving around a crack dealer, and then I'd be fucked. I'd have to tell her everything. I couldn't let the cops put me in that situation. I knew that I was cornered. I told the cops that I'd talk to them later, reassuring them that there was no need to involve my girlfriend. The cops wanted to talk to me right then and there, though, at the Tim Hortons. I'll talk to you guys, just not here, I said. Look at how much attention we're attracting. Some person walking by might recognize me. I don't want anyone to think that I'm giving information to the cops. Les reached for his phone. Okay, he said, we'll meet up somewhere later then. What's your phone number? I gave Les my cell phone number. Les entered it into his phone. In a couple of minutes, the cops cleared out from the Tim Hortons. I waited until they were long gone and then went over to Chester's. I didn't have much money on me. I'd spent almost everything I'd made at the Woodbine and the moving company on crack, except for the money I'd given Christine to put towards the rent. I had enough for a 50-piece, though. After dealing with the cops, I was desperate to get high. As soon as I got to Chester's, I told Chester and Sal what happened to Pablo. I even told them about the cops and how they tried to get me to talk. Did you talk to them? Chester said. Of course not, I said. Man, I can't believe it happened right at the same Tim Hortons, Sal said. What the hell did you guys go back there for? I told you that the cops had shown up there and that they were looking for Pablo. Yeah, that's pretty bad, Chester said. You should have told that kid to get his ass back to Burlington and to lay low for a couple of days. I did tell him that, I said. He wouldn't listen to me. Wow, what a fucking idiot, Sal said. After waiting around for about 20 minutes, I went with Chester to meet the dealer. By the time I got my dope and dropped Chester off, I wanted to get high so badly that I almost shit my pants before I got in the door. And that's from the book Crackleton. And now, William, if we're having issues with time, just let me know. And
No, you're great. You're great. Before you start with your stuff, I just wanted to say that I think SE is still here. I really dug the hell out of that. That was awesome. I really loved the honesty of the details there, especially that first chapter. I think I mean, not everyone has had to lie to a significant other about their drug habit, but everyone has been in a situation like that, right? Where it's like, whatever happens, I do not want to tell the truth in this exchange. And you keep fabricating lie after lie after lie, and it just gets more and more absurd. And I think you captured that just with such perfect precision of detail there. So I really, really enjoyed that.
Thank you very much. And just so you know, the first book was actually, I kind of held back a little on that first book. Crackleton one. There's Crackleton One More Time. And that one actually, I didn't hold nothing back in this one here. I didn't hold nothing back. People asked for it for 4 years they bothered me. Everybody. They were like, when is the sequel coming out? And I was like, it's not happening.
Need more Crackleton. Yeah.
And it was for me. I was writing all my books for me. And then
Of course.
it became more, now it's more also, it's for me, but at the same time, it's for my readers. So.
Cool. Yeah.
Very glad
thank you so
I
much.
want to hear more. I'm calling Encore.
Thank you.
Hear a little
Well,
bit
you know
more.
what? I actually have Daryl here next week, the release of Crackleton 1, the audio book, read by Mr. Daryl Epp here.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And the week or two after that one, he is actually narrating my sequel to Crackleton as well. And go to etsythomas.com. You can get a paperback signed copy.
Cool.
And if you get that now, even,
Awesome.
I will give you a very great deal on the audiobook.
I'll take a look at that, and I'm actually going to put a link to
And
your
the sample
website up
development
on.
work there.
Oh, sorry. I'll put a link to the website up on Twitter as well.
etsythomas.com, etsythomas.ca, whichever one.
Cool. So
Or
Daryl,
my
it's
Facebook store, of course.
so Daryl, it's all yours, and take as long as you need.
Thank you, guys.
Just on that note, it's so funny you said that, because when S.E. Thomas asked me read from my favorite chapter in Crackleton, I said, that's easy, chapter 7. And that's the chapter where the agony of being forced by this circumstance to constantly lie to the most important person in your life. It was just so raw and so right there that anybody could hook to. Even if you haven't had the same specific experience, just coming close to the edge of confessing and not being ready because of the fear holding you back. Every chapter really ratchets up the suspense, but that first section I read, that was when things really changed gears for me. And like you said, there's 2 books, Crackleton and Crackleton One More Time, where it really is a journey. And it's like they say, everybody wants to be a hero, but nobody's willing to go on the hero's journey. And in his books, he really fearlessly does take you on this ride that is so well rendered, but also very fearless. And I'm a big fan. So anyhow, this is a poem called Phantom Stranger. The day we forgot to protect our passwords, there was all this beauty we missed out on. The fruit from that quince tree, tiny and tart, rolling along the sidewalks into the gutters. Shadows like vampire capes caressing the lawn. Smiling when you don't particularly feel like it is beautiful. So is light on red barns. Light biding its time out behind the Salvation Army where men patiently wait for a free hot meal. A cannibal dictator cries over his mother. An ex-girlfriend goes crazy trying to fix everything all at once. Revenge festers like cankerworm, like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi still seething over Spain's reconquista of Andalusia. The husband, so dumb, he's still keeping score. Beauty's like a phantom stranger, lurking behind potted plants, and always the last one to leave the party. We fought over money, while Rust ripped the door right off the hinges. Spun right around by American ghosts and Facebook likes, a hand reaches out, ties it all together. That's beauty. Eternally she calls to us. This is a poem called Minimum Wage Dollarama Express. Hailstones on the roof making that popcorn popping at the Tuesday matinee sound. The bus driver chugging Red Bull. The scarified rider remembers her last kiss, panics, wonders when the next one will come. I try to read, but I'm stuck on page 17. The stone in the river, nestled in a collar of foam. I just can't picture it. Like stars a-borning and dying without ever telling me. And even my dreams involve punch clocks. All those middle managers I'll eternally regret not punching in the throat. And if I could, I'd push the button, blow it all up, start again, change my name to Tarzan, ride the Barton to the end of the line. But if I miss my stop, I get a second warning letter from the boss's nephew. Don't ever tell me my vote matters. And this is a poem called Fire Ant. Walking past the statue of our founding slaver, the gears and cogs inside me keep it down to a low hum, rise up to a steampunk clanging screech when we pass the food basics, where bananas are 49 cents a pound because Chiquita Corp propped up dictators, tore down the rainforests, and here we are, fat yet hungry, tied into Boy Scout knots over 2-for-1 specials and pension plan formulae. The beams began to sag, even the wallpaper grows sinister. The words of the spell that would set it all right are long forgotten. Even on holidays, fire ants work so hard. The mass production tickles the amygdala like a big brother with a mean streak. Cracked rearview Caliban, air pregnant with tornadoes. Turns out the old maps got it all wrong. Greenland isn't nearly that big. The southern hemisphere got a raw deal. There's falling angels everywhere. And this is a poem called Breeze, Corner of Barton and Emerald. You can stick your head out the back and smell the decades of iron alloy, rolled or in slabs, that fathers and sons gave their lives to. Steel can be cruel. Now it's gone to plastics and to China. I want to believe in what's left of the trees. Johns cruise by the girls lounging on the steps of Iglesia Pentecostal Hispania. Tomorrow's Good Friday. The breeze is warm, a gift from the big-hearted tropics. I'm buzzing, everything's in motion. A chip bag rises, hovers, falls. Trevor says turn up the bass. Ephraim misses her dad. He died before they could patch things up. She begs forgiveness of his ghost when she's wired and waiting for the last bus home. Humans crave the light and settle for so much less. Come wind, come rain, wash it all away. Taste it and see. The heart of the world mends by breaking. And this is a poem called Dofasco Dawn. Dofasco is an abbreviation for Dominion Foundry and Castings Company, a steel mill in Hamilton. Tiptoeing along the rusty catwalk, jittery from the night shifter pills. I thought it was the sun, but it was a glowing slag heap waiting its turn. Somehow I got everything upside down again. We transmuted mineral resources into products, chased the ace, counted cards, hypnotized ourselves in the flickering arc lights, the blowtorches of the TIG and MIG welders, sold our souls for a Ponzi scheme. Map and territory, word and idea, bound together with knitting needles and yarn. The holy pulse behind it all. I felt it, and the spaces between. And I'm going to stop there.
Wow, those were phenomenal. I really fucking mean it. I really, really enjoyed those. I like how they were simultaneously like really grounded in like the specific urban, like despairing details of the city of Hamilton, and yet they were incredibly expansive. You know, in that like you go like the moment with the Chiquita banana moment, right? Like you can feel like all of the world's like the interconnectedness of the world's like profound shittiness, right? And it's not just like strictly these like urban scenes. It's almost like Elliot in The Wasteland. There's that moment where he's on London Bridge and he's watching the people pass and he just and then he quotes Dante, right? Like, I didn't know death had undone so many, like, and it's like the zombification of the entire world in that moment. And you really capture a very similar vibe that reminds me of some of like the best poetry that I've heard. So I really, really fucking dug that.
Well, I really appreciate you listening to it and digging it. It's kind of funny, when I first started writing my books, I was using my personal life as raw material, naturally enough, and I saw, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So I needed another big theme, and what emerged was, why not use poetry to document the changes going on in Hamilton, and how, you know, DeFasco used to employ 17,000 people, and now it makes more steel by employing 2,000 people. Thanks to robotics, right? So what happens when you have a generation of young men without any meaningful work, right? And I thought, talking about the way your mental landscape is impacted by your physical landscape, it's worth talking about, and also it's very universal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the like dilemma that you're describing there, right? Like the disenchanted young guy, especially the disenchanted working class man, like that's a universal fucking problem right now, whether it's because of like the death of manufacturing or like automation or whatever you're seeing. And so much of, I think, what we see like politically and socially is like rooted in that. And I think you really capture it in like a really personal, intimate way, which is kind of what poetry should do, you know?
Yeah. For me, the top of the mountain is Anton Chekhov, who's really like my North Star. And of course, with him, you learn the more specific you get, the more universal it becomes. Where you may not be a shoemaker in Siberia, but you connect to it because it's about loss, love, you know, dreams you had that didn't come true, moving, you know, being ravaged by the passage of time, all these things, right? So here's a funny story. There was one time I was in Wales, in Cardiff, and I was doing a poetry reading, and I looked at my stack, and it turned out all the poems I'd brought were about DeFasco and about Hamilton. So I said, just bear with me. This is what I put in my suitcase. And by the end of it, the people were crying because they said the same thing had happened there, where Gordon Brown had found a way to circumvent the tariffs, which had wiped out their like manufacturing industry. So you could go from Cardiff to Pontypridd to Swansea all the way around and just drive all day, and it was shuttered factories. So it was a real testament to the power of art to cut through the nonsense and get to what's really important. So because of art, I was going up to strangers and instead of making small talk, was immediately plugging into things that were the most important things in their lives. So I just think poetry is needed now more than ever, and that it can do things that other things, can't,
Yeah, no,
It's like so crucial.
yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. And I think it's that kind of urgency that we try to capture at Misery Tourism. Like, I think that we're really trying to move away from like the triviality of like art, like the idea that art is either this cloistered academic thing on the one hand, or like this source of like just kind of like diversion, right? Like Marvel movies and shit on the other. And or like of this kind of like art as a source of like edification and comfort. I think that you really, one of the reasons we put so much emphasis on like transgressive writing and writing from outsider authors is because that's where you get that like actual urgency, that actual engagement with like the shit that's really fucking going on. So thank you so much for reading.
Well, I'm really glad you're doing this, and I'm glad to hear you say that. And I like it when you said art isn't just a luxury, right? And it's so funny how Van Gogh used his talent to give a voice to the poor and to rural folk in an age when the only people who had portraits done were society ladies and now only people who own Van Gogh paintings are like billionaires, use them as status symbols. And but yeah, art is not an afterthought or a frill or a luxury. Right. And it's funny, ontological and teleological are too hard to say to ever be memes or be on bumper stickers. But the fact is, if we don't ask these questions, what is a neighborhood for? Okay? What is your neighborhood for? Who is it for? If you don't ask those questions at the front end, economic concerns and fiscal data will always be in the driver's seat by default. Like we had a debate with City Hall in Hamilton about how many stories high could you build a condo, 38, 40, but you never stop and ask who is it for? And if you don't do that right up front, and this whole thing about, once we achieve a certain economic status, then we can amuse ourselves with art.
Yeah, right. And at that point, what's the point? What's art doing? What's it providing except like this kind of very basic, very rote kind of comfort and diversion? And what fucking good is that, really?
Well, yeah, and that's why I think poetry should do the thing that other things can't, right? And like, don't imitate a Marvel movie or try to catch that crowd. One thing that poetry can do that nobody else can is it can give a voice to the voiceless. Also, a poem can slow down time. Like in our society, we're told to hurry up, we're told to be productive, and we want things fast. We like fast food. And if we don't get what we want when we want it, we get angry. But in a poem has a moment. Reading the poem takes you more than a moment. Digesting it, rereading it, more moments. So then that ratio getting out of sync, investing more care and your attention into this moment sends a signal that, hey, wait a minute, these moments that make up the ligaments of your day are worth paying attention to. And don't just let them wash past you, but actually hold them up and marvel. And even though, there's a lot of shittiness around, all these different moments are still worth celebrating. And your mental landscape is so colonized already by billionaires that it's such good practice for you to step back and say, hey, I'm thinking of the wasteland, or I want to reclaim this moment or this bit of my mental landscape away from the billionaires and say, what if I write a poem about it? What if instead of passively injecting a Marvel movie into my headspace, what if I plant my flag in the sand and say, no, no, this moment's mine, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And art is really the only thing, like actual art and literature are really the only things that allow you to dilate time like that. Like I 100% agree. Derek, you are up next, I believe, with a piece that was recently published in Expat, right?
100%. Absolutely. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. I'm going to
That's
put the link in the chat here.
All right. This is a short piece, so there's no epigraph, but if there was an epigraph, Carl Narsgaard was asked in an interview about autobiographical fiction, how he feels basically writing about everyone in his life. And he misquoted this Swedish poet, but basically the question that he asked himself and the interviewer was, if there was a fire in your house and you had a Rembrandt and a cat inside, would you go inside and would you save the Rembrandt or the cat? And so that's the epigraph to this piece and the inspiration for it. This is called Requiem for a Cat. I hate wearing ties. My collar is too goddamn tight. My neck is getting all chafed. I haven't smoked a cigarette in 11 years, and here I am almost 50 years old, lighting the next one with the last one. The kids are vaping these days. I don't think they even leave ashtrays outside anymore. What do I know? So anyway, I'm here. Your sister called. I don't know how she got my number. Never met her. Seems fine. Didn't talk long. She'll be here soon, I guess. Meantime, it's just me and your weed dealer. You left quite a mark. Maybe the next astral plane will be kinder to you. I'm glad your sister told me, but I'm not here because she needed me to fill a room. I've got 2 stories to tell, quick ones, I promise. And then it's time for me to say my goodbyes. 1. Chase is wading in the creek, drunk enough to drown in ankle-high water. We're all watching from the back porch, laughing. Todd's got a stupid new theory. He's yelling over everyone. They got together beforehand. Nas's people and Jay's people. It's the same people, man. Fucking who even thought about Nas in like the last 6 years? Jay did him a favor. It's a setup. You remember? You went right in on him. Did you even listen to the fucking lyrics? Said he left condoms on his baby seat. On his baby seat. Condoms. Plural. Jay-Z fucked Nas's girl more than once in Nas's own goddamn car. And he was so distracted, he didn't even remember to throw away the condoms. Left him in the gray coat. You're still talking. Both of you talking over each other. You're both talking over each other so loud we can't hear Chase. Not through the screen, not up on that porch, not with you 2 dumbasses all red-faced fussing about pop culture bullshit. And fucking your friend's girl, that shit'll happen. We've all done that. But he brings out the knife when he puts it on record. He tells the world, the whole world, all their fans sitting around waiting to hear what smoke Jay's got. You forget, man, Ether was dirty to Jay. Probably his best song in a decade or some shit. And my dude is popping off, telling the world that Nas needs to walk out to the driveway and check that Jeep, look in the baby seat, wear some gloves, my guy. Everyone's laughing. You're so funny. You were always so funny. This is the part I wanted to tell you right here. I wasn't looking at you and Todd talking nonsense about rap. Maybe everyone else was. Maybe they weren't either. I don't know. For some reason, my eyes were down that creek. I saw him trip. I saw his phone go flying. I knew he hit his head when that brown sludge creek water started streaking red. He was twitching. I didn't say nothing. You were still going strong. Every party we ever brought you to was yours as soon as we walked in. We were pretty remote out there. It took a while for help to come, and none of us could do anything in the state we were in. So maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. But I think about it sometimes. Chase cracking open his skull in that creek. You all worked up with your spittle face teaching us about rat beef. 2, I don't think you ever met Jared Henderson. Probably I mentioned him. Guy I grew up with that ended up a local hero. When we were kids, something happened that kind of had a profound impact on me. It was the middle of the 80s. Lots of woods around. Stealing our dad's Playboys and hiding them back there. All that stupid shit. I've been around guns all my life. Jarrett, too. His dad and my dad would wrap a little piece of green electric tape around the butt of the pellet guns to let us know those were the ones we could fuck with. The ones without the green tape on, I mean, there wasn't a lock or nothing, but you'd get your shit kicked in pretty good if you got caught with one. One day, Jarrett did something real dirty. I didn't know it at the time. He took some of that green electrical tape out of his garage and wrapped it around the butt of one of the good guns. Let me stop before I finish. This probably isn't making a lot of sense to you. Why is he going on about some asshole I never met? I haven't spoken to you or seen you in 15 years. In a few minutes, I'm going to walk inside and sit down in a folding chair. It'll probably still just be me and your weed dealer. Your sister still ain't here. And I won't see you then either. There'll just be a smooth little vase laid out on a wooden table. Maybe someone will put some old photographs up of you. That'd be nice. I'll be invited to sit and stare at that vase and imagine someone I haven't known in a long time. It didn't have to be like this. Neither one of us were well. We were nodding off a lot. We weren't eating. I hadn't met Stacy yet. That morning you found the cat dead, you came at me with a fury, accused me of not feeding her. It was my fault, only my fault. There wasn't two of us living there. Did you think I was coming in at night and eating the food you put out for her? Well, that's right. You did think that. That's exactly what you said. You popped open a can of her wet food while her body lying rigor mortis on the hardwood floor and tried to shove that shit in my mouth. This is what you like? You like little kitty food, you sick fuck, you screamed. You put it all on me. I sat there not saying nothing. I was thinking about that day out in the woods with Jarrett when I was 8 or 9. Jarrett had shot a cat before I'd seen him. Just pellets, though. Mean as fuck, but nothing died. He switched out the green electric tape and he knew it and he did it on purpose. You thinking I'm going to say he handled the rifle to me? You think I'm going to tell you about how I thought there was just a pellet in it? How my hands used to shake so goddamn bad, even when I was 8 or 9, before I'd become an alcoholic. I'd probably convince my little kid self that I couldn't hit the damn thing anyway. Nah. He didn't hand me the rifle. He shot it himself. He wanted to. And his hands were always steady. He came back from Iraq with a lot of jewelry, as they say. By the time he got back from Afghanistan, he wasn't a government employee anymore, so the medal stopped, but everyone felt real good knowing Jarrett was over there protecting our interest. Who better, right? Of course, I knew something else, but I didn't say anything. I didn't stop feeding our cat neither. I didn't even know we fucking had one. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. The rest we'll pack up and put away. I'm not far behind you now, but we won't be seeing each other on any other side. That's fairy tale bullshit. We had our chance to patch it up here on this ride, and we missed it. Wish it was different somehow. Goodbye.
God damn. First of all, Derek, as usual, your delivery is fucking amazing. I don't know how you do it. I have no clue how you do it. But I don't want to talk about.
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Fucking wow, brother. Wow.
Huh? So, yeah, it was fantastic, wasn't it? No, it was incredible. And I don't want to talk too much about the piece that you have coming out on
Matthew McConaughey, all the way, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't want to talk too much about the piece that you have coming out on Misery Tourism in a little bit here, but like this piece, just like that piece, like you have a real mastery of the unreliable narrator and of like cultivating these voices that put you right in a particular place and time and in a particularly I don't know, damaged headspace. And no, it's really fantastic. And it's funny that you brought up like the Jay-Z and Nas beef, because I was just talking to my cousin actually about that a few days ago for the first time in probably like 10 years. So I don't know. Anyway, it was just a hell of a lot of fun to listen to that, Derek.
Thanks, man. The whole one of the biggest joys of reading is just getting to listen to whatever your reaction is going to be right afterwards. I always love it, and thank you so much for letting me share it.
Hey, Derek,
What's up, my man?
you need a job, bro?
Nah, man, I train the robots in Hamilton.
No, I want you to read my Carney books, bro.
I can't beat out Daryl, man. You're
No.
firing Daryl.
No,
Wow.
Daryl was perfect for what he did. Daryl was perfect for the job he needed to do. Nobody else could have done the job he done. But you got the right voice for a carnival book, man, and I will pay you, and I will pay you a decent pay. Just think about it, and you know how to find me.
I know how to find you, man. Thank
But
you.
I love your voice, bro.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Fantastic, Derek.
Right in front of there.
Dawson is up next. I saw in the chat that Dawson
fuck,
stepped
am I?
out for a minute. Oh, you're back. You're back. Okay.
I have to follow that.
And you had asked me only to post this piece in the Zoom chat and not on Twitter. So I'll probably just I'll still give you a shout out on Twitter, but I won't put the link to the piece up there.
I thank you. It's trying to get in at Shotgun Honey, but I've got a feeling it's going to get rejected. So
You never know.
yeah, so this is called Lover's Lane. Max was looking for a place to pull off. He had been since Norma finished her shake and said, "I'll suck your dick if you can find a place to pull off." Max had passed by a couple likely spots already, a dark church parking lot and a power station on the edge of town, but Norma put the kibosh to both of them. "There's too much traffic here, and you won't be able to see a car coming from there," she said. Max promised to have Norma home by 9. The clock on the dash read 8:34. "Jesus, Norma," Max said, "I figured you'd know a place." "And why's that?" Norma said in a huff. Max wanted to say, "Because you've got a reputation." Max wanted to say, "Because everybody at school knows you're easy." Max wanted to say, "Because the only reason I took you to the fucking malt shop tonight was to get my dick sucked." Max said, "Never mind, baby girl." Norma giggled. Max kept driving. "How about that?" Max said, pointing to a thicket off the roadside. "How about it?" Norma said. Max glanced over. Norma was unbuttoning her blouse. Max eased his dad's Plymouth down a gravel path. The spot was perfect. The nearest house was 3 miles out, and the greenery was thick enough to hide the headlights from any cars that might pass by while they played backseat bingo. Max wasn't the first guy to find it. Beer bottles and pink panties were scattered everywhere on the ground. Max put the car in park. He killed the radio. He ran his hand up Norma's thigh. He put his lips on hers. She tasted like lunchroom strawberry milk. He hated strawberry milk. Norma unbuttoned Max's pants. She undid the zipper and pulled them down. His boxers were soaked through with pre-cum. Norma laughed and pulled those down too. Max's cock was rock hard. She put it in her mouth. Max grabbed the steering wheel as Norma bobbed her head up and down in his lap. Something moved in the bushes in front of the car. "Norma," Max said. "Well?" Norma said around a mouthful of Max's member. The bushes moved again. Max tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Norma!" 2 men in suits appeared in the car's headlights. Man number 1 had a shovel. Man number 2 had a gun. "Oh, motherfuck," Max said. "Yeah, you like that?" Norma gagged. Man number 1 walked around to the driver's side. Man number 2 walked around to the passenger's side. Man number 1 knocked on the window. Max jumped. Max came. Norma choked. "You could have at least warned," Norma began. Then she saw the man standing outside the car and screamed instead. Man number 1 knocked again. He mimed cranking the window down. Max cranked the window down. "Having a good night?" Man number 1 asked. Max was paralyzed. His erection shriveled. "Seems to me we're both out here doing things we'd rather not have anybody know about tonight. Is that right?" It was Norma who answered. She said, "I think that's right, sir." "I won't tell if you don't," man number 1 winked. Man number 2 laughed on the other side of the car. "Fair is fair, mister," Norma replied. "You've got yourself a keeper there, friend," man number 1 said to Max. Max nodded. The men disappeared back into the brush. A minute later, headlights flicked on the other side of the thicket. A minute after that, a black Cadillac cut out for Chicago. Max pulled up his pants. Max dropped Norma off at her house at 9:31 p.m.
You have the banana too. Huh? You brought a prop.
Oh goodness.
I'm the fucking carrot top of misery tourism readings.
I really enjoyed that one. That was that sound. That was something. That was next level.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and Derek.
Very entertaining.
Thank you very much. That means a lot coming from you.
And
Thank
you
you.
know, Derek pointed this out in the chat, but I just want to highlight, like, you have those 3 sentences, like Max came, Norma choked, and then like that doom, boom, boom, boom in rapid succession. Something about that is just perfect. Like, really, like your decision to use that like rapid fire cadence of really short, abbreviated sort of sentences, like perfectly and hilariously captures that moment. You know.
Well, thank you very much. I'm biting James Elroy quite a bit there, but
Yeah, no, it was fucking funny. I don't know what else to say.
Very comical, baby. Very comical. Keep up with the comedy, bro. You got something there.
thanks, man.
Mike, are you with us? I think I saw you join. Michael?
I am here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Cool. My headset's been giving me trouble. Cool. No, thanks for doing this again. I'm very good to be back. So I will
Absolutely.
also post a Google Doc link that I would prefer to keep among the friends here, as I am also trying to get this published.
Awesome. And as usual, I'll link to you on Twitter, but I won't put the link to the piece up. So
Excellent. That's
okay,
appreciated.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've never read a piece of fiction live before, so this is kind of an experiment. This is called The Marathon. It's from sort of like a weird cycle of things I'm calling search engines. But yeah, so let's just give it a go. Things changed after the content mill settled that lawsuit. Weekly catered lunches disappeared along with the generously stocked snack shelf and the daily bins of fresh apples and kiwis. An operations editor cataloged late arrivals and absences in a notebook, and check-in software was installed on all our computers. Spyware. Jay from the social media team swore to us one day in the break room that a minder from the parent company followed him around the block after he took a 35-minute lunch. But we also got raises. Tiny ones, sure. An extra $5 a week. The kind of raise you'd expect from the faceless British conglomerate that wielded you like a knife in the relentless combat of digital marketing dominance. But it was a raise, all the same. Thank you for all you've done, they told us in one Friday all-hands meeting. This is for the great year you've given us. That was the most remarkable thing about the whole period. What had driven the changes, the lawsuit, the fact that we'd lied to so many people about what we could do, how we could send them all to the top of Google, build citadels of sales from the ashes of their websites, hurl Amazons and eBays into the e-commerce abyss, was never acknowledged. The numbers in our bank accounts, ever so slightly swollen, were purer and more real than any of the fictions we sold Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. My new client sold golf balls, used golf balls specifically. And no, not used golf balls bought at, say, yard sales or on clearance or even by the bag on eBay. Avery Lewis collected them from ponds, water traps. Late at night, Avery told me during our first client call, he snuck onto the golf courses, creeping across the wet fairways in thin flip-flops, shirtless in swim trunks, snorkel in one hand and a large burlap sack in the other. The water was always warm, most enjoyable during a light rain, and every night he found between 40 and 50 golf balls by gliding across the pond floor and feeling through the muck with his hands. His argument, there's much more profit to be had from the mistakes of others. I looked out the window, gazed at our tiny, hazy, building shellacked corner of downtown Boston, and considered our business model, how we monetized dreams, sold illusions, made snake oil look like soothing aloe. Still, he had a point. So why do you need us? I asked. Your people say Google is screwing me over, Avery replied. That wasn't entirely false. The reality is that Avery screwed himself. He cribbed language from Nike, Topflat, Callaway, and Kirkland, word-for-word advertisements copy-pasted across hundreds of subpages, earned a Google blacklisting, a search-wide cancellation, A situation in which you might as well torch your online identity and start from scratch. A shit show, the account manager explained to me just as the client call began, and I heard her phone line click away like a beetle in the dark. But Avery refused to give in. There would be no rebirth. He wanted us to help him resurrect his site, a digital Lazarus in the age of search engine optimization. One of the salespeople told him that 10 blog posts per day would do the trick. And by the time I spoke to him, Avery's first payment had already hit the bank. A few blocks away from the office, Arnold's Bar and Grill hosted weekly game nights in the basement. Nintendo 64 on one TV, Xbox on another, Magic the Gathering drafts at a long table in the middle. Board games stacked like compounding thoughts, too many to sort or choose from properly. The best damn mozzarella sticks in downtown Crossing. I remember an April Fool's Day, the year 2013. Both the B2C and B2B content teams decamped to Arnold's. Steamy air and sweaty nerds swarmed the basement. 100 offices, their engineering staff, their content teams, their Facebook farmers and Twitter grazers. We all came. 10-minute waits for a beer if you were lucky. Any food orders received were greasy miracles stacked on squares of bone china. By some freak chance, a few of us nabbed an empty table and picked lazily at a game of Settlers of Catan. Tom, the newest hire, sat next to me. He was raggedly thin, nearly a foot taller than me, and I found myself smiling as his long, dark fingers reached across the board to seize the dice. He won, mastering Catan's cotton candy colonialism and dashing toward victory while the rest of us watched and succumbed to the haze of Bud Light. He and I stayed in the nook by our table while the others went and stood in line and wait for 6 laps of Mario Kart. Not worth the wait for the sticky controllers that don't even work, Tom said. He lifted a gin and tonic from the table and my eyes fell to the semicircle of water beneath it. Tom drew some of the liquor through a small plastic straw and set it back down. Exactly, I concurred, unsure of what else to say but eager to approve of his comment. I was aware, deeply aware, of how close we sat to one another, our legs nearly touching in the quiet beneath the table. Mike, right? He asked, turning to face me. I looked up at him and smelled fall, small, warm, and borrowed. Yeah, I said. I mean, I've got GameCube at home, if you want, Tom said, allowing a small pause to crawl between the words home and if. It's not too late. Somerville. He smiled and I smiled, and I tipped my nearly full glass of beer toward my mouth. After I drained half the glass, I placed it on the table beside his glass, and we both stood. To write and edit the perfect content marketing blog post, you have to claw away all its humanity, extinguish any creative spark that might streak off the page and entertain. It's content, not writing. Content. To succeed, you have to align yourself with the contours of that word. Curl your body around the C. Hang limp through the O. Fling yourself from the heights of the T's. Be content with the content you make. This is what I told myself as I edited blog posts, stripping the voice, the uniqueness, the fresh ideas, bending sentences into lumps of coal to feed into the great and rumbling furnace of the internet. Anything too good probably took too long, and those that put too much thought into their work didn't last long. Management nudged the best writers to the edge of the cold spring waiting outside. Hell, all of us in the content mill lived at the precipice of a 2013 economy in which the sharpest minds of a misled generation earned $26,000 a year and borrowed cash to pay for train rides to and from our crevices at the crusted edge of Boston. That was the goal, to make us grateful for what stale bread we received, served on foam plates in a small windowed break room. And those of us who mistook a pit for a ladder accepted the extra $3,000 annual and worked as editors. We helped our bosses serve the gruel and made sure our words were worth less than the lies they sold. Tom oozed out of bed and stumbled to the door and into the hallway. After Tom had fallen asleep, I stared at the open slit of the window beside me and felt the graze of weak air against my face from a tiny metal-caged fan. I was listening to the vague etching of conversation from the street when Tom slumped out of the room. I eased out from beneath the blanket, groped for my pants in the dark, and, as I tugged them on, followed. The hallway was dark and smelled of urine. I patted on the hardwood floor to the bathroom door, closed and bordered by yellow light, and listened as Tom retched, the heave of his voice lost in successive splashes of thick fluid. I rapped my fingers against the door and pushed it open. If he noticed me, he didn't react. I stood and watched Tom quiver and eject another 2 times before I turned, went back to his bedroom, and grabbed the empty glass from the bedside table he'd brought me 2 hours before. I hadn't even asked for it. Once we emerged from the caliginous maze of our bodies, he stood, wordless, and returned with hand-warmed water from the tap. Now, I refilled it at the bathroom sink and knelt beside him, placing my hand on his back, feeling the smallness of my hand, the smallness of my gesture. He was simply beyond help. But then he gripped the toilet with his right arm and raised himself, turning his head to flash me a puke-stained smile. Tom reached over and took the glass. Fingers overtook mine. He drained the water and then sat on the floor and looked up at the cracked ceiling. Pained breaths, like a grandfather's. Leaning against the cabinet beneath the sink, Tom's eyes unfocused and his free hand clenched his chest as if he were trying to stop the life inside him from escaping. It was just before 3 p.m., April 15th, when the screaming started. My hands had just released a foam container of disappointing late lunch noodles into the garbage when I walked back to the long row of tables where the content writers worked. Almost everyone was gathered around a single computer screen. Amy, the B2B section editor, rushed toward the bathrooms, typing frantic numbers into her phone. Everyone was sweating. On the screen was a video of the marathon as runners plodded to the finish line before a burst of flame and roaring smoke exploded from behind a line of flags and race watchers. The smoke plume soared as people fled the epicenter, and pieces of the metal barricades flew like pieces of paper, and bags flipped and flags whipped frantically in the sudden movement of air. The sound in the video was low, but there was no mistaking the screams, the blood-pounding panic. One of the runners crumpled to the pavement. Then someone in the social media section yelled out about a second explosion, and the video on the screen was forgotten as this new information gripped us. "Shut it off," I said, and after a moment reached through the mass of people, took the mouse, and clicked on the browser screen. Unsure of what to do, of anything, of what came next, I dismissed everyone. "Go home," I said. "Be careful." During no time in my 2 years at the content mill had we ever left early, even when nor'easters pounded the city from the ocean. Even still, the writers collected their bags and their coats and streamed toward the exits. I watched them approach the elevators and, after a murmurous moment, back away from the metal doors, as if scared of the perils the journey downward might hold, and move as one mass to the emergency stairwell. Other sections of the company slowly disbanded. As I watched them go, I realized that I too should leave. But first I sat down and scrolled through Twitter and Facebook, staring at the images, the horror of it, the stab of vulnerability in the gut of the city. By the time I left the building, access to public transit was cut off. Loose plastic bags crawled in the wind across the street, the whole block empty save for the few confused stragglers unsure of where to go. I made my way north, up along the brick walk of Downtown Crossing, and across Tremont Street into the Common. More people congregated there, similarly confused, some trying to hail taxis that might never come. Sirens squealed and howled in every direction. I felt the urge to smoke, but after probing around in my bag, I only found an empty pack. Facing the prospect of a miles-long walk to Watertown, I hoofed it up the slope of Beacon Hill to cobblestone streets filled with quick-walking escapees. I muttered a thank you to myself as I entered a convenience store and bought a pack of smokes and a lighter. Once outside, I tore away the plastic wrap and lit a cigarette and suckled greedily at the smoke. About 10 feet from me, an older couple stood, coffee cups in their hands, their faces pale, their eyes focused on the cobblestones. There's something about living in Boston and feeling that irrepressible urge to give directions, so I approached them, giving a friendly wave with a small hand, and asked if they were lost. "No, thanks," the woman said. The man beside her jerked his head forward, a rush of a nod. "Can I get you a smoke?" I asked. And as I did, the woman grinned and nodded, nudged the man beside her, and soon the three of us stood in blue plumes into the air above us. "We were there," the woman said, "right at the finish line." She shook her head and started to cry, but scrunched her face and stuck the cigarette back in between her lips. The man moved closer and rubbed the back of her jacket, a Celtics windbreaker. "Let it out. You don't want to bottle it up," he said to her quietly. He flicked some ash from the cigarette toward the street with a thick, fleshy hand. We saw the whole thing. Some kid right there, fucking blown away. I don't think he made it. He puffed at the cigarette. We're lucky as hell to be here. We're gonna be okay. The man never stopped rubbing her back. Before we parted ways, I gave them half the pack of cigarettes and my lighter. As they held the cigarettes in their trembling hands, we looked at one another, and I felt that they too grappled with the question of how to say goodbye. How do you say goodbye to someone you'll never see again? Someone with whom you've shared a few raw moments of hushed terror on the roadside? I still don't know. But in the end, we bent our bodies toward the gravity that had formed between us and smiled sheepishly, our eyes wet. And turning away, I steered myself toward the Longfellow Bridge. When I reached the middle of the bridge, I turned and looked back at the skyline. It seemed so far, so unaffected from the immediate fear, the uncertainty of what may lie in wait inside every discarded trash bag, every garbage can. Harvard Station in Cambridge shut down before I got within a mile of it, a frenzy of police officers and bomb squad personnel triggered by a bag forgotten in the terminal, probably by someone just as terrified of the rest of us. 3 days later, the body count rose. An MIT police officer died, one of the bombers died, and for 24 hours, a 20-block stretch of my hometown fell into the maw of martial law. Body-armored cops searched basements and homes. Families were marched out into the street at lawful gunpoint. Helicopter blades spun quietly in the sky. I couldn't go back to my apartment. I sat in Tom's living room, both of us writing blog posts on laptops, as one news broadcast after another narrated the siege of Watertown and played clips of the bombs at the finish line. That night, after they hauled the young bomber away in an ambulance, cheers rose up in the cloudy skies. The streets filled with people who suddenly felt free, if not from the legal edicts, but whatever primal fear that kept them in their homes and behind locked doors. Car horns erupted. Instruments clamored. I saw people kissing in the streets from the window. Tom and his roommates went up to the roof to drink and smoke and watch the celebrations. Not me. I slid into his bed, pulled the fan as close to my face as possible, and pushed myself into whatever sleep I could claim. Tom's bed smelled of Tom, and I drew his musk in, deeply, hungrily, until the word passed. I still remember how I dreamt I was Avery, sunk at the bottom of a pond. My life as simple as the need to collect golf balls, lost then sold to the next fool, eager enough to see if they can blast a shot across a 100-foot water hazard. I still remember how warm that imaginary water felt against my skin, the absolute security of it, knowing exactly what I was doing, where I had to go, what came next. A gravity of purpose so powerful, you're eager to let it drown you. Thank you.
Wow, holy shit. So about halfway through the piece, I realized that it was like a period piece. As weird as it sounds, like to call a piece that's set in like 2013 a period piece, but it sure feels like it at this moment in history, you know? It feels like a million years has passed since then. And I love like the kind of perfect attention to detail that you have in this piece, because when you're writing like a quote unquote period piece, you really have to like have that mastery of period detail. And it's funny, like things like content mills are just fascinating to me, and such an odd like relic of that particular moment in history, and like the contrast between like the just like banality of content mills and then this moment of like a horrifying like new, I don't know, it was just a really fascinating piece and I enjoyed it a hell of a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a good chunk of that is a true story. I lived in Boston when the Marathon bombings happened, and it was a very weird couple of hours that day. And then I lived in Watertown at the time where, you know, there was the shootout and then there was the manhunt. And so it was very strange being in a, you know, in the story, the character's outside, but in real life, you know, they searched our house and there was a Black Hawk helicopter above my house for like a day. And
wow,
I mean, it was just crazy how,
goddamn.
Yeah. And I mean, it was, you know, you look outside and it's like you're literally in a war zone in like an American suburb. And yeah, it was pretty wild. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't realize that piece would take so long to read. So
no, that was fantastic. That was fantastic.
Very nice piece.
Thank you.
Sorry.
it reminds me of back in the day when I was traveled the carnival, and I was traveling through the States. And I was out there when they had the sniper killings and in DC. And I was held up on the highway for hours and hours because they were checking every vehicle looking for this man. And that, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, that was a really weird situation in Boston because I remember listening to the police scanners, and they were talking about things that did not wind up on the news, like a bunch of people who got arrested and just disappeared. Like there was like a bomb robot pulling a vest off a guy. Like no one ever wrote about that in the news. It was a very, very weird day. So yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
letting me do that.
Really, I'd like to hear more about that. Maybe sometime we can talk.
I remember there was a guy, I don't know the police scanner, but there was a guy who was a former cop in the area, and they had shut down, because usually like you can just tune into a police scanner on a website, but they had shut them down, and this guy actually had the box in his house, so he just set up a stream on YouTube with just a camera aimed at the police scanner, and there was someone on Reddit who was just transcribing them, and I guess at a certain point, like, the police contacted Reddit, and then Reddit had to tell this guy like, hey, you need to stop like writing about where the police are.
Oh, wow.
And then I remember, because I was like trying to work from home that day because like they wouldn't let you leave because the cops were everywhere, and I remember the internet keep going out and in and out really weirdly. So it was just very, very weird couple of days.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, fantastic. I don't know. I hope that I hope that we're not all like sitting next to police scanners, listening, like in a state of martial law in the not too distant future. Hopefully, this will remain a period piece. Anyway, Michael was our last scheduled reader for the night, but as usual, we're going to do an open mic period here. So if anyone has something that they'd like to read, Rudy, you're with us.
Yep.
Rudy,
Also, if anyone has any questions for the authors that did a reading tonight, feel free to ask.
Also that, absolutely. And Elle, I know you had sent me. Oh, sorry. Elle, I know you had sent me a private message saying that you wanted to read. So you'll be up first, but if anyone else wants to read, just put a message in the chat and Rudy will be watching it. I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break here. I have to run to the bathroom. In the meantime, if anyone has questions, as SE said, if anyone has questions for any of the authors or anything they want to talk about, feel free. And then when I'm back in 5 minutes or so, Elle will be up.
Do be brave.
It's a good looking joint.
My question is for Dawson. Yes. Does Wendy's have a vegetarian burger option?
I so wish they did. I don't know. My dad has a conspiracy theory. There's a burger place around here, and he's convinced that Wendy's ripped off their entire menu. I'm pretty sure he's right, to be honest. So
have you tried the Impossible Burger from Burger King or whatever?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, but
I am. I like it.
It's better than, I mean, like if I want fast food, that's usually where I go. So,
see, I'm old, so it used to be like when I was a vegetarian many, many years ago, all you had was the Subway vegetarian like patty. It was the grossest shit in the world. It was just like this flat cardboard piece, and that was the only way you could eat fast food vegetarian.
I mean, that just sounds like most of what Subway sells, so that's not very surprising to hear.
I was a sandwich artist for many years, so I'm not.
my cheat at Subway is I let myself eat fish, so I just get tuna if I'm ever in there. But so I guess I'm not really a vegetarian, but
It's 2020. You'd think like by now they would have come up with some new vegetables or something for vegetarians.
Some super vegetables. Here's the best vegetable.
Wait, so Gordon, where are you from?
Edmonton, Alberta, baby.
All right, I'm not really sure.
Alberta
Where is
boy,
that?
just like it says in all my
Is
books.
that North Alberta or?
Edmonton is fucking, well, the capital of fucking Alberta.
Where is that in relation to like Ontario? Because that's where I know.
That's like 1,500 miles away.
Oh shit! All right.
It's by
How many
British Columbia.
kilometers?
Just before British Columbia.
Oh,
closer
okay.
to the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Oh, other side. Okay, complete other side of the country.
Steak and potatoes country. And big
If I
doobies
keep-
with no tobacco.
If I keep moving in the direction that I've been moving, I'll wind up on that side of the country in
Eventually.
20, 30 years. Lived an hour from Montreal most of my life. Now I'm an hour from Toronto. So
Oh, if you're a writer and you want to make it, don't go there. Because you know what? It's too slow down there, man. There's no action. If you want to get recognized as a writer, I'll give you all one tip right now. You got to get your ass seen on the street. That's not to be rude, but it's the only way to do it as an indie writer, really. Unless you got, the whole horse up there. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's tough. But I seem to be getting somewhere. Just be crazy and not give a shit and, be yourself.
I mean, that's how I found that's how I bought my copy of Crackleton.
Yeah. Hey, were you in, it was Supercall, right?
Yeah, Super Crawl.
I remember you now, man.
Yeah, you do?
Yes, I do. I remember the face.
That was like a full year ago. Nice.
That's awesome. Go to my website, man. I'll give you a deal on all of them. Or you just come to me. Go to Facebook and talk to me personally, and or email me. I'll give you a way better deal than my website.
Fuck yeah.
Just because
I haven't paid full
I
price
actually-
for a book yet.
I actually really enjoyed this. So, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks so much for coming and reading. This has been a lot of fun so
You know what?
far.
I'm
Think
different
Sharon's
than
fun.
most writers, so I think I can make this a very entertaining room, and I'll gladly come back because I had a good time.
Definitely. Just watch her Twitter feed. It's every
As long as
Friday.
you don't mind me doing shots of smoking doobies, we're all good.
Hey, no,
That's how
no problem at all. That's no, but it's every Friday at 8
Just send me
p.m.
a link,
Eastern
so
time.
in case I forget. Send me a link. That's all.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, some next Friday, afternoon. I'm on the radio in the afternoon, so I'll probably be able to do this too.
Cool, yeah,
I'll tell you
yeah.
how the radio went.
I always tweet the link out to everyone who follows us on Twitter. So, and everyone is welcome to come. We usually have about, 25, 30 people in here. So it's usually.
And I'll email you the radio station I'm going to be on Friday.
Okay, cool. So, it's time for the open mic. So, Elle, you were up first, I believe.
Cool. Thank you. This space is really cool. So I'm just happy to participate.
Yeah, happy to have you.
I'm going to read an excerpt of a novel that I'm working on. I haven't read this out loud to anyone before, so hopefully you will like it.
Good luck.
Thanks. The light warps blue through the blinds across Daddy's figure. For once, the TV is off. I round the couch into the living room, and the cat I threw into the river is in his lap. I go over to the both of them and crouch. The cat's lips are curled back, and his anemic gums are a dry, pale pink. The eye is worse, more crusted, like super glue is the only thing holding it in its place. Fuck, I say. How did you find him? He was yowling in the bush by the house. You have to take care of this, he says. He gently strokes the cat's side, full of hairy knots as thick as knuckles. What? You didn't throw him in properly like I told you to, and now he's suffering. Shock temp pulls through me. There isn't any remorse for my actions, but no responsibility comes to me either. All I notice is the inescapable pull of Daddy's power mixed with fear. The sense that if I don't do what he says, I might lose him or lose my life. I respect and cower before it like you might prostrate before a god, that I'd fucked up my penance to him. He strokes the cat's cheek and spit foam pusses from its mouth. I glance back at Daddy. His eyes contain no insight. Why do I have to do it? I ask. I don't know why I ask, knowing it will agitate him. You wanted this animal, Daddy says, so handle it. I search around the apartment for a blanket or a box, something I'm willing to throw away. Already the fear of disease settles in me. Where had he been, and why had no one seen him in weeks, and why today of all days when I am rattled and full of wanting and etched raw? This seems like a cruel joke or a test from Daddy. He might do that, see how far I'm willing to go to do the things he tells me to. I wonder if I'll always be too afraid to act on my own behalf. By the window, the large potted fern sits, dried out from neglect. It has a few still green strands spraying from the inner part. I grab the pot and bring it into the kitchen. Daddy brings the cat to me like a baby, only delicate to the cat now because it is dying. I press my hand against his forehead and pull the skin back, separating the crusted lid from the bulging eye. The cat is silent, but his breathing quickens. I sit on the floor, Daddy looming above me, and he places the cat in my arms. My hands are shaking. Do it quick, he says. Grab the base of the head with one hand and then grab above the shoulders. Just pull as hard as you can and snap back. This isn't like the chickens, I say. It'll be easy, he says, I promise you. I don't want to be irresponsible, I say. Daisy, you are already irresponsible. I pull the cat closer to my chest, cradling his skull. He curls against the warmth of my body. You'll see, Daddy says. Most of the time, when you kill something, you don't feel shit. TV shows people feeling guilty for killing, but when you do it, when you finally pull the trigger, it ain't shit. I don't know how to react, so I push my fingers through the cat's mossy fur, deeper now, massaging against his bony ribs. Part of me wants to bleed him out like the hens, hang him by his feet in the tub, slash open the throat, but then, of course, we'd have to stun him first. Daddy doesn't know it, but I understand what he means when he talks about the nothing feel of killing. Humans don't really care. We've been killing for thousands of years, and Daddy talks to me as if I don't know. He's so distant from the life I've lived, concerned with only what I can do for him rather than what I am. Even when he found out about Sloan, he hardly inquired how we knew each other, which is my one fear, that he might ask. Daddy walks away so I have some privacy with one eye, but then comes back and sets a hammer next to my feet. Jesus, I say. He walks away again. I do wonder if, in his experience, he'd only killed animals before, if it was something more. In Missouri, every man has killed at least a deer or put down a rabid dog, but his fascination with death leads me to think, what else? I place my other hand on the base of One Eye's neck and ready myself internally. My mind creeps up on a block, some resistance in my working up to the killing, and the nerves in my body fray. I stare at the cat and his blank, bulbous eye rolling around at me and steady my hands. He's in shock. I try the chicken method, take a deep breath in, pull the neck, and snap back quickly, and nothing happens. The cat looks blankly up at me. He doesn't even wince. It's hard to determine if he's in pain but unable to express it. There is definitely life in there, but it's going fast. My chest gets tight. I realize I'm fucking this up, and I close my trembling hands over his neck and squeeze. I ring, and it's as though my hands are reluctant to tighten. I have to will my mind to go over the wall, kill him, and then suddenly a pressure releases like water over a dike. The cat's neck is rubbery and cartilage or small bones pop and break loose inside the tunnel of his neck. His eyes turn up at me and roll back, but he is still, after all that, alive. I twist harder, grind my teeth, push through it, and then finally the cat is gone, and his body jerks and seizes, and I hold the dead thing close to my body as his last throes rumble through him. When I lay his limp body onto the linoleum floor, a rusty stain colors my palms. I've torn his skin open. It's blood. The stain is the same temperature as my skin and hadn't felt like liquid at all as it washed into the prints of my hands, a red burnt orange. It's bright at first, but then dries matte in seconds. Daddy says nothing while I wash my hands, but fills his glass with ice and pours around for himself. I never even told Daddy about the times I'd cleaned hogs with my father, the buckets of crimson organs and meat covered in fatty, bone-colored cream. I'm drawn to him because of this lingering ferocity, the possibility of his violent past. Perhaps he is the virile man I prayed for all those years ago. You did a good job, he says, the ice settling as he brings it to his lips. I dig the fern carefully out of a pot. The leaves crackle and break into fine dust on the tile floor. I take One Eye's body, curled in on itself like the head of a fiddle, his skull loose on his neck, and place him inside the pot. I put the root ball of the fern on top of One Eye and scoop the remaining dirt with both hands around the fern, patting the cool peat and topsoil. The adrenaline is gone, but my stomach burns tight. The animal is still with me. How to describe this to you? A weight is on my hands as I move them around like gloves. It never happened like this with the chickens, or perhaps I was always too distracted by the shit in my aching muscles and the stares of the other women in the chicken huts to notice. Serial killers and soldiers must endure their victims too. The lives they take must shroud around them. Daddy must have pushed me to experience this to understand him better. He puts his hands over mine as I tamp the pot, and then he sweeps the remaining soil, and together we put the pot back in front of the window. Just for now, he says, until we can dump him. The whole thing only takes a few minutes. I brush my hands against my pants, but the gloves stay. I walk into the kitchen, pour water into a pitcher, and water the fern until it bleeds through the holes in the bottom, making small pats onto the carpeted floor. Daddy was right. I had forgotten. There was no guilt or sadness or mourning. Only the silky cloy of the cat's end against my palms, the same filter of death clouding everything I touched. Okay, thank you.
Wow, holy shit. That was a really fantastically moving piece. And I don't want to sound like cliched here to say the sort of nightmare logic of it, but there's like, the piece had a very particular kind of like it had a very particular kind of emotional journey that, at least for me, like you usually experience in dreams, especially with like all the Oedipal stuff in there, and like the way it opens with like almost the narrator sort of finding herself in the room and the dad is there and the cat is there, and it really is that same kind of dream logic where you're just in this like phantasmagorical awful situation, and then suddenly everything unfolds from there, and it was really just really fantastic. Were you, by any chance at all inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat? Because like a lot of some of the stuff about like the like emotion and logic of murder in this piece feels like it feels like there's some like synergy, some similarity there, I guess.
Interesting. No, I've actually never read that, but now I want to. I've always been really fascinated by the psychology of killing, and that's kind of what I'm doing in this like next book. So I'm glad like that you kind of like noticed that, but yeah, I've never read that, so I should put that on my list.
Definitely, yeah. It's very short too. I think it's like it may be less than 100 pages. I think it's a novella, you know.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for reading.
Thank you.
Rudy, who do we have up next?
I believe B-Boy is up next.
Oh, B-Boy, Brandon, you've got something for us.
I know how Dawson felt earlier, except I'm not going to choke myself with a banana, so I don't have that to lean on here.
Didn't bring any props tonight, Brad?
No, and my liquor is not in shot form, so I'm not going to be leaning on that one again either.
All right.
So what I'm going to be reading for you guys tonight is actually a bit of an intro piece, kind of setting the frame and the tone for the setting that I've been working on. It's getting a bit of a revamp. So hopefully you guys dig what I've got going. The following is a letter from the scholar, Klein Yergal, discovered in the desk in his secured research site, found in a room wherein 3 of his assistants were nailed to the stone walls with iron pythons and their bellies flayed open. Yergal remains unaccounted for. I am writing this to explain something that I have uncovered, for a fear has gripped me that I may not reach the city of Anselun with sufficient time. I have been tasked with uncovering the cause of the recent incursions in the far reaches of the continent, and the reason that we have lost contact with several of the other arcologies. I was selected, mind you, because my methods do not rely on the technological foolishness of the Ceruleans, which have been unable to produce any results thus far. My findings do not instill comfort. In researching a location outside of the Kilzad jungles to the east, my operatives captured a startling creature, some green-skinned brute with shaggy hair, knotted skin, and an odor that could turn the stomach of a tergivore inside out. Repulsive as the thing was, we were able to bind it, after ensuring that it was unable to gnaw off and regrow its own limbs, and force the monstrosity to answer a few questions. The outcome was rather disturbing. All that it would say was that you will all learn to remember the roots of your existence, or at least that's the nearest approximation that I can manage. Another phrase of interest was, the world remembers what you do not. Shortly after, the beast chose to end its own life by tearing its head clean off from its shoulders and to escape the restraints, and blindly walking into the hearth of the research facility's furnace. Likewise, my agents in the islands off the Aelan coast had some fortunate luck and were able to procure a pixie using an iron bird cage and woolen cloth. I was grateful for the cloth, or the creature would not have survived the journey to my laboratory, but it was merely a fluke of its imprisonment. The tiny thing was more talkative and perhaps provided the most concerning information yet, and of a sort that clarified the words of the large green fellow, perhaps a factor of the pixie being considerably more intelligent and more concerned with being set free. I am not a conversationalist, so I will not bore you with my retelling of the interrogations, but I will instead provide you with the following summary. The Fae, and if correlations can be drawn, the primordial giants as well, seem to be fixated on how they have been forgotten by mortals, in the sense that they are no longer worshipped as divine figures, but spoken of only in hushed whispers or as scary stories. They are scorned, driven by an unwillingness to be left by the wayside. They refuse to be forgotten any longer. They crave veneration through fear, reverence, or even love. And indeed, consider the old stories. How the Fae seemed almost godlike, but now we can gun them down with iron bullets. There is a connection between the weakening and the lack of belief, and it is little wonder that they have decided to stake their claim by force. Their actions have thus far been a reflection of this. All of the towns and cities destroyed have been because mortals would not bow before them. All the missing villagers, workers, farmers, etc., have either been lured away or outright taken from their homes for whatever sustenance this veneration provides them. Though in regards to the primordials, I suspect this sustenance may simply be in the form of consumption of the flesh. Our worship, our subjugation, and our flesh are food for them. We are their prey, but what if there were a way to give them what they want while remaining safe from their predations? What if we were to serve them willingly, offer our prayers and reverence in exchange for our safety? We could at least remove the Fae as a threat to our existence. It may take entire farms to stave off the primordial beasts, but surely there must be a way to sate them as well. I suspect that this holds true for others as well. Dragons are known for their callously prideful demeanors and could certainly be pursuing a certain sort of cult following, amplifying the influence that they already hold over the Dreseni peoples and expand their territories. And the demons are most certainly capable of such grand manipulative game as power grab. Across these 4 groupings, I suspect that this motivation holds true. They're trying to reclaim this world in their image, whether that means destroying it or subjugating it. The dragons and demons are certainly pliable, If the old stories hold true, treasure and worship can hold back the dragons from wiping out entire nations. Dracian survived as long as it did because of precisely that, if the stories are to be believed. And the fiends, what cost do a few mortal lives hold compared to keeping the demons from our doorsteps? If we have to sacrifice a few virgins or slaughter a few dozen cattle or forfeit a few villages worth of wealth, so be it. That speaks nothing of the living dead, though they seem to be either far too human or far too mindless to invest any additional time researching their intentions. Likewise, I dare not reflect too intimately on the golems of ancient lands, as their behaviors are strictly what they were designed and mystically assigned to do. The mutants that spawn the Terracivore are likewise unknowable, too volatile and unpredictable to be confined to a motive beyond eat, reproduce, and kill. I suppose that we could find some comfort in knowing that these threats, at least, are more easily understood. What I can hope to bring back to Enselden is a simple, yet impossible message. Our current plight is one that may be solvable, at least in part, by remembering our old ways of life. I would implore that the Council reconsider our relationship to the past, to the legends of old, and to the traditions that we had forgotten long before we enforced into these modern arcologies. We've gone too far from our roots, and now they try to reclaim us. We've abandoned the primal, essential nature of our lives, and now we are faced with the end of life as we know it if we are unable to hold the lines. We have lost faith in the old ways. We must resume the sacrifices of old, the ancient traditions. We must make holy the ancient legends once again. The letter is to be interned in Yurgol's file at the Enclave for security's sake. His ideas have been deemed dangerous and are considered a threat to society at large. Enclave operatives have been assigned in the search effort to locate Klein Yurgal and bring him in for questioning.
Damn. I love your world building. You put it's clear, just like the like intricate level of effort that you put into it, and like the broad scope of that piece, you know, was it's great.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I like the
sorry.
idea of and you told me a little bit more about this on Skype, I think, but the idea of like I guess the Fae or like these magical forces is almost like a climate change type deal, like a global warming thing that people are kind of ignoring and pushing back, and then it's just kind of at your doorstep. That's a cool idea. I've really seen
The setting is definitely in a state of apocalypse via magic denial.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, cool. Rudy, who's up next? Who do we have
Hestia
next in the?
just asked, so I think that's their queue's empty. So Hestia.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Hestia is next.
Hestia. Hey, Hestia, are you with us?
Yeah. Hey, can you hear me fine?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. The thing I wanted to read is something that I just wrote. So we'll see how that turns out. I wrote it while thinking about desert wanderers and stuff like that. So
cool. Take it away.
There's no title. Linen-wrapped feet floating across endless dunes, skin-hardened and sandblasted, calluses built on unyielding devotion. The oily taint of sin burned off my soul by a decade of core-penetrating desert sun. I've seen angels, I've seen devils, held dialogues with the souls of saints. My endless journey for solace aged my soul 20 years beyond the vessel it's contained in. I've seen the ruins of Solomon's temple, the corpse of Petra, the crypts of Babylon. If you can adapt to being a nameless wanderer, you'll find yourself closer to God than most. Desert winds carry a peaceful insanity in their wake. Schizophrenic divinity embodied, grains of sand rub me raw, make me open to purification. The tomb of old worlds built on faith haunt the The tombs of old worlds built on faith haunt the dunes. I pull my cowl up, whisper a prayer, and keep wandering towards salvation. Ugh. That's it.
I feel like you've read so many times at this point that I've almost run out of things to say about your work. But while I was listening to that, like one thing that struck me, and I was thinking back about some of the pieces that you've read in the past, is like the like physicality of the like spirituality in your pieces, in your like religious poems. Like it's almost like, oh my gosh, I'm heard Flannery O'Connor, right? Where like religion is like deeply intertwined with like actual like palpable physical suffering, in a really like in a really like descriptive and almost gross way. And I see a lot of that in your religious writing as well. And I really dig that, because I don't like a lot of pieces about religion and spirituality abstract it in a way that like divorces it from that physical suffering. But if you go back and like you read the Bible and shit and you read religious texts, like it's 90% like people being flogged and crucified and hanged and stoned. So I really, yeah, I dug that a lot.
I definitely have the opinion that the like finding yourself closer to whatever spiritual belief you have typically involves pain. Like, I mean, martyrs are typically some of the people viewed as the closest to embodying the best parts of faith. I mean, if you're able to die for something, that whatever cause it is, that it means so much, right? Like you, especially if it's a death that you choose, right? And so I don't mean like something like someone conscripted to war and forced to die or some shit like that, but actively choosing to I mean, that's like the whole point. In the Bible, the whole point of like St. Peter's rejection of Christ, as the rooster crows, is metaphorically he would rather save his own skin than risk dying with Christ, right? So, and I'm not Christian, but like still that view I feel is very important. And I definitely agree that too many people abstract it and it becomes like very metaphysical, when I feel that it has to be tied to physical or mental suffering. Yeah, sorry for like rambling there for a second. But,
No,
yeah.
no, I get, I get it, and I really agree. I really do. Yeah, Rudy, has anyone? I haven't been watching the chat. Has anyone else volunteered to read? Or are we kind of approaching the time when we'll be wrapping up here?
I don't see anybody else in the queue right now.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, everyone, as you comment through, thank you guys. It was a very, very interesting night.
Yeah. Thank you so
And
much for coming and reading. It was, or well,
Thank
for
you,
coming
girl.
and sharing your work anyway.
Thank you, girl, for finding me.
You're welcome. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad you came.
Yeah.
No problem. I'll come again for sure. Just invite me.
Yeah, definitely. Just
definitely.
keep an eye on the Twitter feed. The link always goes up there
I gotta
Friday
let you
evening.
know in advance because, if you want a reading, it's got to be Daryl, right?
Oh,
Then we'll
gotcha.
just-
All
We'll
right.
just
I don't
go
do that.
across weeks and get through the whole book eventually.
I just write it. I don't read it. If I was to tell you it like just my own way, it wouldn't be the same as the book, right? It would sound a lot different. Because I have an editor for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it.
Girlfriend there. My wife and my life partner, and the one that's been there since the beginning. So without her, this could not happen, and without me, it could not happen. So it's
Yeah.
a mutual thing, and so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a
And
great
I
time,
think,
guys.
yeah, thank you so much for coming. And And thank you to everyone who's read. I do want to give people one last chance. If there's someone who did want to read tonight and didn't get a chance, but if not, we may call it a night.
Don't forget, scthomas.com.
Yeah, I put the link up on Twitter, so anyone who watches the video can go and they can see the links to all the pieces.
And my famous out phrase, S.E. Thomas.
Yes, got it.
Have a good night,
Okay.
guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Love
Thank
you
you,
all.
everyone who read tonight. Thank you to Elle. Thank you to, I'm always scared that I'm going to forget someone, so I'm going to actually bring the list up here. But thank you to Elle. Thank you to Hestia. Thank you to Michael. Thank you to Derek. Thank you to Ryan. Dawson. Can't forget. Thank you for bringing props tonight, Dawson. Props
Anytime.
on your props, I guess. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone. As usual, I'm gonna keep the chat open, keep the meeting open after I end the recording, but I am gonna end the recording now. If you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching this on the website, as I said, we do these things every Friday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm tired. You get the point. Okay. Thanks, guys.